Good night and welcome to Mindful Life 373. I am your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is currently the 3rd of March in the year of our Lord 2024. The year is speeding along. Jiggle says, hey blood, want to chat with you after your live, please. Word Jiggles. Well, you can message me anywhere you see my profile and I do respond. So message. Don't be worried. Mikhail Modesto says, you know what's crazy? All this rainfall and wasa catch none. Ha! I think I heard someone in Wassa recently saying that our reservoirs are actually pretty full. It's not like we are at the same struggling level. I heard that. I hope that's true. I'm not 100% certain. I heard that from someone. Daniel Knight says, while he's responsible for the policy of the SSA, its HR factor is up to the director. Well, yes, that's what we're going to get into talking about, Daniel Knight. Daniel Knight, you were the one who highlighted the policy in the local government law. The night after you did that, we went into that law and spoke directly about that. Appreciate it. This is why he got a little splash. 3rd of April, Adriel Robinson. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. April, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? The months all blend into one after a while, Adriel Robinson. 3rd of April, you are right. The 3rd of the 4th in the year 2024. And let's jump directly into it. The Minister of National Security is saying that the bacchanal with the SSA is his responsibility but not his fault. You cannot put the blame on him. Do not put that blame on him, he is saying. So let's dive into exactly as the minister said in that article. Hines, don't blame me for SSA fiasco. National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines says while he's constitutionally responsible for the Strategic Services Agency, he is not to be blamed for the ongoing fiasco at the spying agency. Hines said had he known all that was happening at the SSA, he would have acted much earlier than the government did to rectify the issues with the agency. Hines made the comment at a media conference at his ministry's Port of Spain headquarters yesterday. Asked if he took responsibility for all that is now unfolding at the SSA, Hines said, of course, I am responsible to the cabinet. I am responsible to the parliament. I am responsible to the people, which is why exactly I am here today. So responsibility under the Constitution is quite clear. However, he said he was not taking blame, as that and responsibility are two different things, which he said he has tried to explain to the nation repeatedly. Blame is one thing. Responsibility in the constitutional sense is another. Something is another something. I have tried to share with this nation on several occasions in the past. I can't know. I could not have known who the SSA was hiring, whether it was members of one church or next, whether it was members of one family or next. I could not have known that. As a matter of fact, had I known that, I'd have stopped it long before now. Blame and responsibility is not the same thing. And I agree. It's that regular statement you hear people talk about with responsibility and fault. Like something could be your responsibility, but it's not necessarily your fault. Where what you do with your life, you know, in your 20s and 30s, how your life shapes up is your responsibility, but it's really and truly not totally your fault. You didn't have control of yourself through the entirety of your first 20 years of life. So some fault could be plausibly pointed at parents and society and all of that. So blame is more on the fault line, while responsibility is something different. But I understand that in the general context when you're talking about life, when you're saying in the sense of what something that is to come, like, okay, it's my responsibility to fix something, although it might not be my fault that it is bad. All right, I understand that in that context. But when you're talking blame and responsibility in the context of something that is under your charge, isn't blame and responsibility kind of blending into the same thing there? Henry says, so Hines admit he does not know what is going on in his ministry as the head. Well, yes. You see, because when you are responsible for something, the statement regularly goes that you should have known. And if you didn't know, then it's your fault for not knowing. Because if you are responsible for taking care of this group, but when something goes wrong, we cannot blame you, then what kind of responsibility is that? If something goes wrong, we blame members of the group individually. But you are responsible for the group nonetheless. Something doesn't totally add up there. Because to me, here's how I could see you saying it's not my fault, although it's my responsibility. You have to prove that at every stage of this, you were fully in control of all aspects of your responsibility. And as far as I understand, the bacchanal in the SSA has been going on for multiple years. Are you telling me that you were doing your duty to the fullest extent, and even so, years could go by with the country's top spy agency running a rogue operation and you have no idea? Like, let's be real. Let's be real here. Okay, I understand in theory what you're saying. All right, you aren't there for the day-to-day running of this. You aren't the HR manager. You aren't making the hiring decisions on a day-to-day basis. Okay, I understand that. But are you saying that years could pass before an organization that you oversee, you recognize that it's running a rogue operation? Hi, Tobago Tours. Asked if the hirings at the SSA needed to be looked at and given greater parliamentary oversight, Hines said such oversight already exists, but this may have presented a chance for greater scrutiny. We learn as we go along, and the SSA has been in existence for a very long time. We've never had this before. Something has developed, he said. So you will all learn from this and you rearrange your affairs, increase the height of your fences to ensure that that which popped up, which has happened, doesn't easily happen again. And that's fair. Daniel Knight says what Hines needs to do is sit down and amend the SSA Act to include a mechanism for whistleblower, Daniel Knight says. Maybe that needs to happen. And that's what I'd like to see even in this. Because you cannot now tell me, you cannot tell me these multiple things at the same time. You cannot tell me that you did everything that you were supposed to do and it's not your fault. And there was nothing wrong with the general policy and oversight of the business, of the institution. Those both things can't both be true at the same time while we're seeing this happening. It's either that some person in oversight wasn't doing their job properly, or some policy in oversight needs to be tweaked to make sure this doesn't happen again. But something needs to change, because you can't leave it as is. Jiggle says there's something in the TTPS that can lend to this situation called vicarious responsibility. Can you take trigger? So as greetings, brothers and sisters, love and guidance all. Blessings to you, can you? Blessings, blessings. Something has to go on here. Miguel Danoa, good evening, sir. Something isn't adding up. You can't tell me that basically you acted as you should and the policies are above board, yet this is happening. And just to refresh some people's minds, good evening, Anisha, just to refresh some people's minds on what they're talking about here. The allegations are that there may be 10 and upwards murders. Murders blamed on the SSA. Daniel Knight says what happened is the SSA director asked a member of his church to make a pastor of the church an SRP. Really? Wasn't it former Commissioner Griffith who made him the SRP? And as far as I know, Griffith isn't a member of that church. And yes, the director asked someone to make someone an SRP, but that's not the entirety of it. There were guns involved. How did the guns reach where they reached? There wasn't just only a pastor involved, there were multiple members. So yeah, I will say maybe the whistleblowing legislation might be part of it, but nonetheless, somebody wasn't afraid to tell because somebody still told the Prime Minister eventually. Eventually came to the Prime Minister. We could ask questions as to why it took this long. Miguel Danoa says rogue and spy agencies are not new. It happens in the CIA and FBI. However, something here is just not right. To me though, I wouldn't put our SSA at the level of like the CIA and FBI. And even the CIA and, well, the CIA more so. But you don't often hear about the FBI going rogue. A lot of the rogue actions of the FBI you hear is more in history, where certain things were easier to cover up. And the rogue actions oftentimes were in cahoots with the leadership, the political leadership anyway, that Hoover. So yeah, I understand there are rogue spy agencies all over, but I mean, I didn't put the SSC at that kind of level. Our agencies aren't even run the same way their agencies are run. And you know, just the treatment of this. The Prime Minister was able to, on a moment's notice, fire the director and hire someone else. That shows the amount of the amount of power the Prime Minister has over this. So then it was clearly an oversight issue to me. It's not like, you know, sometimes when you hear people complain about the police, it's that police may be difficult to get rid of the police. It may be difficult to fire police. You hear people complain about teachers, and here it's not, the process to get rid of some teachers isn't exactly the easiest thing. But in this case, all it took was the Prime Minister saying so. So the Prime Minister could have said so 4 years ago. All of this was happening under their noses. Who inside the SSA is supposed to report to the Prime Minister? The director only? There's no one else inside there with any kind of oversight? You need to look at the interview with the pastor, Gigi, and independent Senator Paul Richards. I probably need to. What was the major thing noted in that? I know the government and Double G are in constant loggerheads these days. Not surprising, really and truly. He is a political opponent to them. So it's really not that surprising that they are constantly at it. But when you understand like what the arguments are about, it seems sometimes strenuous that those seeking to lead us are arguing on safety issues in a violent country. Good night, Ronnie's World. Government hits back at Gary. National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines and Foreign and CARICOM Affairs Minister Dr. Amory Brown said the U.S. government pulled its assistance from the Special Operations Response Team in 2021. The move came following the deaths of 2 suspects in the murder of Andrea Barrett while in police custody. This is in their press conference, they highlighted this. Hines quoted the article and also played a TikTok from Voices of the Street posted on Friday, in which Griffith said, "I would love to do a polygraph test with me and Keith Rowley to show that he's a blatant liar. Show where it is I ever told you persons died because they fell off a chair. That is a blatant lie. This is a matter that took place 4 or 5 years ago, and he keeps on holding on to that. These are 2 men who were involved in the killing of Andrea Barrett. They will never be able to kill again. They will never hurt another female again. And these were 2 men who were involved in over 60 other charges of rape, sexual assault for women." And that's what Keith Rowley continues to speak about. So because these 2 people died at the hands of the police, he keeps trying to put me as if I am to be blamed for that situation. Hines reminded that murder is never statute barred and the matter remains under active police investigation. Like, I mean, oh, Daniel, I hear you. I see. I understand what the Minister of National Security is arguing here. The Minister of National Security is arguing that as a commissioner of police, you cannot be so flippant about men dying under your leadership. These were men that may have been murdered. It was an unlawful death. And how dare you, as a commissioner, someone who's supposed to uphold the law, you're saying something like these men will never kill again, makes it sound like you're nearly happy they died. I understand that from the legal argument. But I don't know if this is the hill that Mr. Hines and the government should attempt to climb up and stake their flag on in conquest of Mr. Griffith. Because I understand the legal argument, but to attempt to sway the views of people in the public over the death of 2 people that have been publicly deemed guilty. I'm not saying that they were found guilty. Innocent until proven guilty in our law system, yes. But the public deems that these were the killers of Andrea Barrett in a most macabre, horrific way. Yes, I know, Marco Polo, there are allegations. Yes, that's why I started off saying, let's not go back to the fact that there are allegations. I started off saying I understand the legal argument he's making. I understand it. He's a lawyer. I understand the legal argument. But he's also a politician. And he's here to lead people. You are leading a country as the Minister of National Security that is very violent. Many people are in fear about the violence in the country. As the leader of the country, you're looking at people reacting to these things on an emotional level. And whether the men were guilty or not is irrelevant. Marco Polo says, if the commissioner of police setting that example, what will those under him do? Now, bear in mind, he did not say that it was good the men died. He did not say that he gave the order for them to die. He spoke there and said they will not kill again, making a given assumption that the men were guilty. That's his major thing in that. Now, as a minister, that you see people in the comments when the residents of those more difficult communities say things like, "Oh, you're too wicked." When the residents say things like, "Oh, you're too wicked," regularly you hear people saying that, why they don't say that when the criminal's doing it? Did my internet just drop? Are you all still seeing me? He's playing on public emotions to brush murder under the carpet. Well, he's playing on public emotions to brush police brutality under the carpet. And he wouldn't be the first one. He wouldn't be the first one. Marco Polo says Gary talks too much, that's his pitfall. Well, I mean, the National Security Minister, I would say, is the same thing. I would say he's in the same boat of that talking too much business. But yes, try, if you are a PNM supporter, try to exit from that mold and see this as someone who hasn't voted PNM their whole life and their parents don't tell them that they must. See it neutrally. And as a person looking at the violence in this country, our National Security Minister going to bat for two men accused of murdering an innocent young woman. Does that seem like the best direction? And he's alleging that these actions, the United States saw these actions and the United States was aghast. The United States pulled sponsorship from SORT and all of that and all of that. Now, I am suspicious of what they're saying there, because this isn't the only suspicious activity we saw under the police. Our police be killing people regularly, and regularly under suspicious circumstances. The police shut up one of the Alexises in Enterprise and said they saw him with a gun and they shot him. And when they show you the image that they shot him through a car with all the windows up with G5 blacked out tint on all the glasses. But they saw a gun in his hand. The police killed a man and his girlfriend somewhere down in Central here. 3 o'clock in the morning, the police kicked down his door and alleged that he shot at them. So they shot back at him and killed him and his girlfriend. Does that sound like a reasonable story to you? Where's our Minister of National Security to jump up to defend the man and his girlfriend who was shot? To defend Mr. Alexis, who was shot in his car? To defend Das Boss and the other 3 people who were killed in the apartment? Well, the other 2. Where is he defending that? But he is attempting, just as you allege that Gary is attempting to play a national emotion, he is also attempting to play a national emotion. He's attempting to form the narrative to make people think that what you should be is be worried about Gary. You see what he did with the police. Look what he did with the police. Even America was worried about what he was doing with the police. Listen, I'm sorry, but I struggle to buy that. I struggle to buy that. That's the only thing that worried the US. The difference is this commissioner not trying to boast about it in a sublime way. You do understand that the statement they quoted from Gary here was a recent statement. That wasn't a statement made while he was commissioner there. The difference, and boasting about it makes a difference. That's the main difference to you. If you had a police commissioner murdering people, and then you had another commissioner murdering people but telling you about it. It's worse that the one tells you about it. Like, come on. That to me, that difference is a political difference. That difference is a difference you only see if you don't like him politically, because that's not really a difference. If you're telling me that the difference, the problem that the national security minister and he dragged out the CARICOM minister to double team it to make a problem here. The problem that they highlighted isn't that Gary was boasting about it. The problem was the thing itself. This incident, they killed 2 people in police custody. The US was appalled by this and pulled sponsorship from SWOT. Really? Mr. Brown Vice says, well, see, this is seem like political against GG, while straying from the point he isn't doing a job. Gary Griffith National Security Media Conference was folly. NTA political leader and former police commissioner Gary Griffith said the joint media conference held by the ministers was folly. He said the conference was held to highlight again a matter that transpired over 3 years ago involving 2 men jointly accused of over 60 offenses of sexual crimes against women. At the conference, the ministers spoke about the comments Griffith made. They said the deaths also led to the withdrawal of assistance for SWOT from the US. Griffith said, if indeed I am somehow responsible for what took place with the 2 men and we are shutting down units associated, then do we make the prisons commissioner responsible for the recent death of a prisoner? How about McDonald Jacob or Earl Christopher Harewood for the 100 police killings which took place after I was cop? And do we shut down the prison service, the Coast Guard, the Defense Force, or the IATF, Guard and Emergency Branch, Northern Division, and other aspects of the TTPS because of deaths involving them? Exactly. That's why I don't actually buy that. Not saying that these should be shut down, but if we are to be truthful, it is clear that certain persons wanted to shut down SWOT for the one incident because they were pegging back criminals, some of whom may have been closely associated with government officials who paid them through big state contracts. Marco Polo says, I was one who actually believed Gary would have made a difference in police service. All he was PR. I don't think he made a massive difference. I wouldn't say he made a massive difference. However, if you have to ask me, if I prefer Griffith over who we currently have, Griffith. If I prefer Griffith over who succeeded him, Griffith. If I prefer Griffith over who was before him, Griffith. I prefer Griffith over every single one of the can't speak English batch commissioners we have had constantly, consecutively, year after year. This one, you cannot tell me that she has been an improvement. At least we had PR. The Newsday and Guardian articles never mention those previous acts that GG mentions now. Which previous acts are those? And the reality of what GG is talking about here is undeniable. The fact is, there are criminals known to the police and the public who are close friends with the PNM. We know that. That is a fact. So, for him to say now that SWOT was closed because of pegging back criminals with links to the government, it's something that is believable. That's at least believable. Griffith said, contrary to the information presented by the minister, the sort never received funding from the US government, and I challenge him and Hines to prove otherwise. Additionally, the same US embassy referenced by Brown also approached me when I was commissioner to express their utter disgust that this PNM government has a cozy and close relationship with persons from another country who are not allies of theirs and who are considered a dictatorial-led country. And the what's that name? And the Yeri Cray says, should we accept extrajudicial killing? What do you mean accept? But which criminals got pegged back, Nathan? Which one? I don't know. I didn't say which one. I didn't say I know which one. I said that him throwing out that accusation is believable because we know that the PNM has criminal friends. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. I don't know which one specifically he pegged back, if any. I don't know. I can't say. But yes, when you say accept, what do you mean by accept? Should we encourage it? No, I don't think we should encourage it. But when you say accept, how do we not accept it? Okay, I don't want to accept extrajudicial killings. What do I do about it? What's the solution to not accept it? Marco Polo says no crime boss got arrested, charged and convicted as far as I can recall. There was some that got killed. Let that be noted. As far as arrested, charged, and convicted, I can't recall. I can't recall either, if one was. I can't say. But that's not the only thing that can peg back criminal activities. That's not the only way that activities can be slowed. Indeed, though, as the National Security Minister was speaking there about this issue with Griffith and being investigated. To me, what happened in our prisons over the last week is an incident much like that. I am sorry, I just don't buy the prison officer's version of events. The prison officer's version of events seems just as plausible to me as the fall off a chair and die version of events. They killed a man. And bear in mind, the killing of this man is just as bad as the killing of the alleged killers of Andrea Barrett, because this man was not yet found guilty. He was a man on remand. He was accused of a crime. And okay, at least in the killing of the Andrea Barrett suspects, you could say that, all right, they were attempting to get information out of the men and they went overboard, and that's what happened. All right, okay, that's not good, but it's understandable. You arrest these men, they did a heinous crime, you're trying to get to the bottom of it. You don't really care for their health and safety while trying to get to the bottom of the crime. Your intention wasn't to kill them, but your intention was to solve this. All right. This case, you're not even attempting to investigate anything. You're not attempting to catch the man. The man is already caught. He cannot go anywhere. He is totally under your control. And he's killed. And some of the initial allegations from some of the prisoners were that it was a religious-based something that occurred. Muslim prisoners that got upset over something to do around something they had to happen around their fasting time. To murder a Muslim prisoner in Ramadan. Isn't that right up there? If you want to make an issue of the 2 men who died in police custody previously, at least make an issue of this. And if you're telling me that the US cares so much about how we treat prisoners in this country, then the US is supposed to be sending messengers to the Minister of National Security over this business too. Or is it that what the US tells you is only convenient to tell us when it's for political mileage? Autopsy result, prisoner beaten to death. And I mean, of course, what else did anyone expect? Of course he was beaten to death. Of course. And you know, the ideas in the differences of how many people see how the political parties see justice also, where the UNC talks about emptying pneumatic on the criminals that enter your property, while the PNM seems to be talking about how dare the police hurt two rape and murder accused. You're understanding the dichotomy you're creating there. When the PNM is worried if homeowners get guns, they're just going to shoot people. But criminals have the guns currently. It's creating that image that one side is more criminal friendly while one side is more law enforcement friendly. Fireflame says it was a riot. A prisoner could have killed him. Again, the asking people to believe that one Fireflame is like asking people to believe the fall off the chair one. Yeah, he fell off the chair and died. Like, yeah, I mean, he could have fallen off the chair and died, but come on now. White Leather says, I want FUL, pay the bribe like everybody else. Go Paul Luck is not see Paul Luck. The saying is, you might get caught. UNC says no to CCJ. Former AG wants national referendum. And is it any surprise when we see the loggerheads between the two parties on issues of law enforcement and legality that the UNC does not want to agree for the highest court that the PNM would want? Just the PNM wanting the CCJ might be enough for most of the UNC to say this is a bad idea. According to the opposition, Senator Wade Mack, the UNC still believes the CCJ is open to political influence. As far as the UNC is concerned, the people of TNT get more fairness and justice in the Privy Council than they get in other areas of the Caribbean, Mack said. He said the PNM government has shown it was prone to corrupting independent and public bodies. And listen, the guy who was charged for the murder didn't do the murder allegedly. Is that about the Andrea Barrett one? The guy who was killed in that was reportedly innocent? Or is it the man who was killed in the prison? Because I saw a video, a friend of his, an associate of his, said that he was innocent. He was innocently placed in prison too. Well, in the jail, in the remand. Fireflame says, do your thinking never see you comment when criminals killing citizens? Fireflame, exactly as Marco Polo said there. That is a foolish line of argument. And it is scary to me that very often police officers make that argument. Fireflame, do you want the public to see you in the same light they see criminals? if you are a police officer, I don't know if you're an officer. The defense seems officer-ish. I'm not saying you are, but it seems like that. Yeah, I remember that, Daniel. I remember that. But that is sometimes a story. I have heard men talk about, I rented my car and other people did XYZ in it, and it's not necessarily true. But I guess we'll never find out, and that's the problem when you kill people instead of prosecute them. So we don't know. But yeah, Fire Flame, you don't want the general public to see the police as criminals. That's not a good idea. You don't want, when the public looks at the police, the expectation that the public has is the same expectation of as the criminals. That's not good. That's not where you want the public at. The public should expect more from the police. The public expects the police to be honest and honorable. So when they come in and they act dishonest and dishonorable, obviously the public is going to be upset. The public expects that criminals are going to be dishonest and dishonorable. So when a criminal comes and acts dishonestly or dishonorably, it's like, well, he is a criminal. Now, if you want us to expect criminality of the police, well then, okay, let us know, and then we could stop paying the police and let the police just be a gang as they want to be. We saw the video, place was black and inmates throwing missiles. Is it far-fetched? It was friendly fire. Yes, it's far-fetched because an autopsy was done. And the autopsy said he was beaten to death. Not some errant missile happened to scrape his temple and cause 1 in 1,000 gash that freakily killed him. No. He was repeatedly hit about the body, purposefully, not by mistake, by people who couldn't see him there, by people who aimed at him and beat him. The autopsy ruled his death beaten to death. I saw the guy's nickname was Big Meech. I don't know him personally. I would guess with a nickname like Big Meech, and from his picture, he seemed like a large fellow. Like he wasn't exactly a tiny little toothpick out there. You don't beat a large fellow to death by oops. And here's the thing. Even if he was beaten to death by other inmates, it's still the prison officer's fault. If you take me from my home, accuse me of a crime, you haven't proven that I committed that crime yet, so I am innocent still. In the eyes of the law, I am still innocent. But you take me from my home and put me on remand. Who is in charge of my safety while I am here? Who is in charge? All right, Nikolai. Who is in charge of keeping the order in the prisons? If the prisons officers aren't in charge of keeping the prisoners safe, then we might as well change our model of prisons and put it a kind of Mad Max, you know those movies where the prison is basically just, you lock people in and whatever happens in there happens in there. Then that would have been the prison we had. But that's not the prison system we have. I am supposed to be protected while I'm in the prisons by the prisons officers. That's why even the epidemic of jailhouse rape that plagues the world, That is an indictment on the prison service in and of itself. In some of the most secure prisons in the world, there are riots. What makes Trinidad so special? I don't understand the relevance of that. I don't understand the relevance of that. So, because there are riots in the most secure prisons, then it's not the prison's officer's responsibility to keep the peace? Like, what's the relevance of that? Really and truly. How is that relevant? Alright, though. Let's jump into Guyana dealing with BBC. The Guyanese president dealing with BBC. What about our judicial system only catering for some? In what way? In what way does our judicial system only cater for some? Guyana's president scolds BBC presenter for climate change lecture. Irfan Ali rebuts Stephen Saka during heated interview where reporter challenges leader on the impact of country's oil industry. The president of an oil-rich South American country has scolded a BBC reporter for lecturing his nation over climate change. Irfan Ali of Guyana sat down with host Stephen Saka of BBC Hard Talk show for an interview. The country has seen rapid growth. He said over the next decade or two, it's expected that there will be $150 billion worth of oil and gas extracted off your coast. It's an extraordinary figure, but think of it in practical terms. That means, according to many reports, 2 billion tons of carbon emissions will come from your seabed from those reserves and released into the atmosphere. But the 43-year-old head of state was quick to jump in with a rebuttal. Let me stop you right there, he said. Did you know that Guyana has a rainforest that is the size of England and Scotland combined? A forest that stores 19.5 gigatons of carbon. A forest that we have kept alive. And hey, do you remember Brad Boyce? Yes, but modern days, in what way are you speaking directly? Marco Polo says BBC journalists always speak down to third world leaders. Fact. Fireflame says is the judicial system to blame, not the prison officers. You see, I don't like that, you know. The police say the same thing. The police would stand up on a corner and take $1,500 from you, send it to the government and say, well, it's not our fault, it's the laws. You all vote for those laws and we are just enforcing the laws. You don't have to do that. You know that, right? Even in an overcrowded prison, if you murder a prisoner, it is still your fault. If you are a prison guard, the ever famous one people like to call, if you're a prison guard back in 1939 in Germany, if you're a prison guard in 1939 in Germany, and your instructions were gas them, whose fault would it have been? The instructor? Mr. Nathan, sir, there are men who are on remand 20 years now. Yes, I know that. They don't see police judges or magistrates every day. Fact. Marco Polo Trinidad population have a third world mentality when it comes to prisoners. Daniel Knight says they have to enforce the law, but the law allows for discretion, which officers don't use. Exactly. That's the part, that's it, discretion. And to me, anytime you enforce immoral law, you are an immoral person. It's not on the people who gave you the law to enforce. If you enforce an immoral law, you on your own are an immoral person. That's how the idea of morality works. You are not excused of your responsibility for morality because you were following a law or following an order. That's just not true. Back to the BBC now. Yeah, I like how the Guyanese president spoke about that. When the reporter asked Mr. Ali whether the rainforest gave him the right to release the carbon, the Guyanese leader retorted, "Does that give you the right to lecture us on climate change? I'm going to lecture you on climate change because we have kept this forest alive that you enjoy, that the world enjoys, that you don't pay us for, that you don't value." Guess what? We have the lowest deforestation rate in the world. And guess what? Even with the greatest exploration of oil and gas, we will still be net zero. Mr. Saka noted his words were powerful and tried to jump back in, but the president did not allow the interruption. "This is the hypocrisy that exists in the world," he said. "The world in the last 50 years has lost 65% of the biodiversity. We have kept ours." The exchange was met with intense debate on social media, with commentators leaping to defend both President and Mr. Saka. And as someone noted on Twitter, it's hard to imagine Norway's PM being asked this question in this way. And that's true. They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do that. They would never ask a European leader these questions in this manner. It's because they look down on the Caribbean leaders, they will do something like that in the first place. And I'm glad that Mr. Ali put him in his place. And here's the thing. I don't even think that Guyana needs to be net zero. I don't even think Guyana needs to be net zero to talk about that. Listen. Many poorer countries, as it were, have the right to pollute until they get wealthy enough. In my book, if you're looking at this in terms of what is fair in how we look at this in the world presently, if you have nations that have been existing, the United Kingdom, England, Britain has been around for over 1,000 years. They engaged in slavery. They engaged in deforestation. They engaged in conquest and plunder. They engaged in resource use to the extreme. And now that they sit comfortable, they want to look around the world and say, well, listen, you all have to be careful what you all do in attempts to get rich. After you do all your thing to get rich, you want to turn around and tell us that we can't do what you did to get rich? No. That doesn't work like that. To me, if you want to tell the poorer nations that they can't do what you did to get out of their poor situations, the way you tell them that is pay them. So, okay, you don't want me to come drill out all of this oil out of my seabed and make money? Well, here's what. I am willing to not drill the oil if you are willing to pay me to not drill the oil. Daniel Knight says what they all do when Russia cut off the pipeline. They all fire back up their coals. Who polluting? Yes. And you see, the reality is, that's my problem with climate change in the first place. A lot of climate change. The reality is, nobody cares about climate change if it affects something that affects their quality of life. Most of the people pushing the extremes of change for helping the climate are people who those changes won't affect, who those changes may actually be a positive for. They would like to see the windmills and the solar panels and stuff. They aren't bothered by that. But for the people who those changes would move them from middle class to poverty, they aren't interested in the climate. Burn the climate. Listen, if you're telling me that the earth is going to burn down 300 years in the future, unless I live a life of poverty till I die, most people will say, well, let the earth burn 300 years in the future. I am not going to live a life of poverty for the off chance that the earth will survive 300 years in the future. That doesn't make sense. And in reality, as I've seen, what's the guy, Beyond Something, a guy who writes on climate change and the economy, the intersection of both. He was making the point that the best way to get people to take care of the climate is free market capitalism, raising people out of poverty. The richer people are, the more they care about the environment. That's just the reality. Poor people don't care about the environment as much. They care about living. If I have to struggle for 10 hours just to live, I'm not going to be planting trees. Planting trees aren't exactly in the front of my mind. If I need to cut down all the trees to get fuel to live, I'm going to cut down those trees. And similar to that, because it's not only the Caribbean, they do that kind of condescension too. They do it to Africa. Botswana threatens to send 20,000 elephants to Germany. President Mokgweetsi Masisi offers to send the animals as a gift to Berlin amid a dispute over hunting trophies. Botswana's president has threatened to send 20,000 elephants to Germany. Angered by proposals in Berlin to restrict the import of hunting trophies, President Mokgweetsi Masisi said in comments published on Wednesday that Germans should try living among elephants. He claimed that an explosion in the number of the mammals roaming his country has produced a plague. Earlier this year, Germany, one of the largest importers of hunting trophies in the European Union, raised the possibility of stricter limits on imports due to poaching concerns. Masisi told German Daily Bild that hunting was an important means to keep elephant numbers in check, saying that Botswana was dealing with overpopulation. The proposal put forward by the Environment Ministry, headed by Steffi Lemke of the Green Party, met scorn from Botswana, which has seen its elephant population grow to some 130,000. And this is just the reality. The blue-haired white women living on the coast off of their parents' money that are the super liberals of the whole world, oftentimes the proposals they have are disconnected from the places that they have the proposals for. They don't understand the world. Okay, right. You love elephants. Oh my God, you watched that documentary on elephants, and they followed Malila from the point she was born on her trip across Africa, and you saw these graceful, intelligent animals, and you were like, oh my goodness, how could anybody kill an elephant? Oh my God, nobody should ever kill an elephant, and your heart bleeds for them. But you don't live among elephants, do you? You aren't trying to be a farmer with a herd of elephants walking through. That's not your daily life. And that's the reality of so many of these. When I heard that Botswana story, I chuckled. I found it was really along the lines similar to the Guyana response. And I think more of the so-called less developed or developing world are supposed to start responding to some of these developed countries just like this. Respond to them with some spunk, with some verve. Allow them to know that you understand how to respond to these things, and that you understand it's hypocrisy. You know it's hypocrisy that they are engaging in. It's not that they care so much for the environment and world. They're trying to do things millions of miles away from them to make themselves feel good. That's about it. Guyana, drill, boy, drill. Forget about them, drill as much as you could, get it all out. Faster the better. More power to that. The difficulty in all of that, as many people highlight, is the deals that they have right now as they drill, and the deals oftentimes seem pretty unfair. It's not like the deals are the best for the host country many of the times, but what you gonna do? What you gonna do? All right, people, it's 11:06. And we're looking to dive out. Are there any further comments or questions on the inside before we dive out? The worst deals in the industry, according to some online posts. Well, Marco Polo, you could probably gauge that by Guyana's relative strength. If Guyana was the poorest country that has ever found this much oil, then the chips that they would have to bargain with would be the least. They weren't going into the negotiation with much. All they had was the raw material. I'm saying if all they basically had was the raw material, they don't have much bargaining to go with. And they desperately want the raw material out to start making money. Now, to me, what might be key to that is the length of period of these deals. So maybe it would have been very wise for Guyana to do some of these very difficult deals. Yes, they may be very unfair, but maybe it was the only way to start. But maybe you should only do them for a decade. And as your country builds up some amount of capital, you return to the negotiating table now with more chips in hand, now able to negotiate better deals. But I'm not Guyanese, and I'm certainly not even in the Guyanese leadership or governance. So who am I to say? We'd sit and watch as neighbors and see how it all unfolds, eh? Anyway, people, that's all I have for now. If there are no further comments or questions, this Mindful Live has, as usual, been brought to you by Mindful Education. Yes, Mindful Education is still there. That's how we bring all of this to you. So be sure to subscribe to us if you are interested in such Mindful with 2 L's _education over on Instagram. You can message us wherever you see me. You can message me if you are interested. We offer learning pods, which are small, intimate style classes with a homeschool geared teaching style with no more than 6 students, and we do learning stages. We don't do learning ages. It's not about the age, it's about the learning stage. We do preschool all the way up to CXC. If you are interested in such, hit us up. We also offer private tuition for most CXC and CAPE subjects, one-on-one if you need that specialized attention. You think you really need someone to sit with you and go through this subject? Well, message me, call us, and we'll get to you. When Dr. Oli made the comment that contracts were not cast in stone, they loved that. Guyana should go to Burkina Faso. Why? But that's true. Contracts aren't cast in stone. That's a fact. And sometimes, if you don't have much chips to bargain with, you have to take the contract that isn't best for you. It's just the reality. It's why some people take minimum wage. If I don't have much skills, well, I take whatever pay you offer me, the least amount, and okay, I'll take that. But as I develop skills, we renegotiate and you pay me more. Alright, people, I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. This has been the Mindful Live. I am Nathan Spring. I'll see you guys again for the next Mindful Live, which is going to be tomorrow, Thursday evening, around that 9:30 p.m. time, and tomorrow is special. Tomorrow is Thursday, and on a Thursday, as you know, if you are familiar with the lives, what we do is we talk. It's Thursday Talks. I mean, we talk every night, but the intention of Thursday is to jump in. You could feel free to join the discussion over there on TikTok. Enter the discussion and actually talk to me. If you have something you'd like to debate, discuss, converse, ask, feel free to jump in, and that's all we do. No direct topics, no direct articles per se, but we'll be discussing tomorrow. So be sure to tune in then. Until then, people, stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.